Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the NovoVia Radio Show. I'm Jennifer Ollis Blomqvist, and today I have with me a wonderful guest that I have been stalking maybe since New Zealand when we went to our MI conference away in Christchurch, probably a year ago now. So Melanie, thank you so much for coming onto the show with me. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you work with, and then I'll come with my ideas of why I wanted you to come onto the show with me.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me, and how fun to reconnect after meeting in such a wonderful place. I am here in Buffalo, New York today, where I live in the United States, and where I spend most of my time right in front of this very desk. I do a little bit of teaching, I do a little bit of research, and I teach and run my own business focused on training motivational interviewing, which is the shared love that brings us together for this conversation today.
That's right. Yes, and I'm also self-employed, so I also know about the ups and the downs of of that work for sure. When we met in New Zealand, I was at a wonderful workshop that you and your husband actually had on trauma-informed care. And during this whole year, I've been thinking a lot about like the importance of kind of conveying your like empathy and stuff for just people who are having some trauma. So I think I was reading on your website as well, and I think during your talk you talked about working with child welfare, and I have a lot of groups that work with child welfare and the rights of the child, etc. So I was wondering, could you tell us a little bit more about what trauma-informed care is and how it applies in child welfare?
Yes. Child welfare is where I started my own career as a brand new social worker. And so after I got my MSW, I went to go work in this population, and it's where a lot of social workers get their start, right, in child welfare. And as I look back on it, I think like how funny it is that we consider this sort of a starter job for social workers, when actually it's so intense and it takes so much skill. And so motivational interviewing is such a nice framework, I believe, for working with families involved in the child welfare system. And both clients, communities, workers, organizations embed a lot of system concerns that agitates trauma for everybody involved, right? And so so the idea that we can put all these things together, the trauma-informed motivational interviewing, child welfare, I found is just feels like a really nice fit for trying to address and improve some of the work that we do in child welfare. And so I really got my start in thinking about how to bring these ideas together by having the experience myself of not having those things brought together for me, and then learning them sort of one at a time, and and thinking about how to bring them together, and really wishing that I had these skills when I was early practitioner in child welfare, and feeling a little bit guilty about perhaps some disservice I did to my clients by not knowing the things that would have best served them when I started out in the field. So if I had it to go back and do again, I would have tried to package all this into my my MSW work when I was getting my degree.
Yeah, and that's something we talk a lot about here too in Sweden. the social work program is quite general, like it's deep, but it's general. And there's a lot of things that social workers need to know in order to work in the social system. But sometimes when it comes to like how you talk to people or how you meet people, it's not exactly, they don't really focus on that. So that's why there's lots of motivational interviewing trainings and stuff that happen after once you start working. So it's
Yeah, which makes a lot of sense. We do need that foundation, right? But at the same time, we're so hungry as new practitioners for like real life skills that are going to allow us to go out and have a positive impact in people. And I think that it's one of the reasons why people come out of a social work degree program feeling like, oh, I should know how to do things.
yeah.
I have these degrees now, and a big sense of imposter syndrome or worry about how is this going to look for me, because there is so much learning that happens after the degree.
Yeah, for sure. And you're probably a completely different person as well. There's lots of phases in life you go through in your career and all things that happen and etc. So
Sure.
could you give us an example a little bit of what like when it comes to trauma informed care, what would like what do you wish you had known before? Like how did that help you?
Yes, it's a great question. Well, first, just to ground and orient folks, when we talk about trauma-informed care, there's various definitions floating around.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we in the U.S. here, the some of our federal agencies have historically been good at shaping what we mean when we say trauma-informed care, and there are a set of core principles. They are safety,
Mm-hmm.
trustworthiness, transparency, peer support, appreciating that, the sense of community and shared experiences really
Yeah.
do impact the experiences of trauma, collaboration, empowerment,
Mm.
giving people voice and choice in how they get the services and care that they get. And then we've added more recently the sort of like a cultural and historical perspectives
Mm.
that we know shape how people move through systems. And this is especially relevant for child welfare, right? Sometimes
Mm.
we frame a lot of what happens with people as personal psychological characteristics, but so
Yeah.
much of what people go through has to do with the the social environment, all the
Yeah.
things happening around them, and how history and poverty and
Mm.
policy has shaped all of those things.
Right.
So I'm glad that there's more recognition of all those things. And then, so when we talk about trauma-informed care, we're talking about those things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the way that trauma-informed care is seen through the lens of organizations can happen in different ways, but very often it's like, oh, organizations should be aware of this and try to design trauma-informed principles into the care that they give to everybody as we call it a universal precaution. Like, we're not
Mm-hmm.
going to ask somebody, are you
Yeah.
traumatized? Okay, therefore you get some trauma-informed care,
Yeah.
but not you if we don't think your trauma's been significant enough, right? Like, let's just take for granted that when in systems like child welfare, that most of the people we encounter have experienced some significant trauma,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore we don't have to decide whether or not we're going to try to build an approach that's trauma informed. We're just going to try to give that to everybody. Nobody's going to be hurt because we've considered things like trustworthiness as part of our intervention, right?
Right. Yeah. And that's so important too, because it's like, it's kind of like with everything in the world, if you have different diagnoses or whatever, like those cancer people who are traumatized need trauma-informed care, but the rest of us perhaps can benefit from it. So let's just not give it to all. Let's give it to everyone then.
Well
Um,
stated. Yeah. And so the a lot of systems have framed this good idea as something that we offer to clients.
mhm.
And so one of the things that we've tried to do as trainers, my husband and I are both motivational interviewing trainers, as you mentioned, and I lead this work in child welfare. Sometimes I can cajole him into coming and doing a little training with me too. He has a whole other full-time job as a university professor. And so when we do this work, we've really tried to widen this net to think about trauma-informed care as not just something that clients deserve, but also something that the workforce deserves. I mentioned earlier, that trauma really permeates systems, and it affects what it's like for us to work in those systems, and becomes part of the culture of what it feels like to show up to work every day. And so when we talk about these principles like safety and trustworthiness and collaboration, like we deserve those things from the systems that we work for too. And we'll be able to offer those things better if we have them ourselves. So when we think about training in trauma-informed motivational interviewing, we think about it not just as a way of working with our clients, but also as an organizational intervention. Like by offering these principles and talking about them as things that should live within the culture of the environment, can this also be an intervention that helps make child welfare agencies healthier and happier places to work?
Yeah, and that's, I think, why I was so motivated to have like conversations with you, because a lot of it's one of the hardest things to work with, I think, child welfare, and especially because there's a lot of like or what's it called, shame and like guilt when you're trying to be a good parent, but you're obviously failing, and that's why the system has to come in and make some choices for you, and be like, a lot of my participants in my groups feel like awful, like they're actually abusing the people that they're working with because they have to do this, right? And I noticed that generally those groups that I coach, they're much not sadder, but they're more stressed and like closer to burnout, and there's just all sorts of things. Often there's intrigue or like conflicts between the workers or like bosses and stuff. So it's like definitely an environment that you need to have like psychological safety. And it sounds like trauma-informed care is one way to achieve that then.
Yeah, and you're all the way on the other side of the world from me. When I go and to conferences or talk to other people, I do hear, even in systems that work very different from each other, very often child welfare workers experience these shared phenomena of high burnout, high stress. And what people tell me in almost every part of the world is like, maybe it's not the clients so much that cause some of this distress for me, but it's working in this organization where we can't provide enough resources, or we're asked to do things that maybe don't align with our most favored way of doing them. That causes more stress. And there's a term that we started using here sometimes in reference to child welfare, moral injury, that comes from military systems that first originated from this idea that, oh, like when I'm asked to do something that doesn't align with my values and how I want to take care of the world, that causes me some like psychological damage myself, makes it hard to cope. And so it's another source of this trauma that we're talking about.
Exactly. And I remember from that workshop that you had that, we always think of trauma as like, I mean, trauma is something horrible, but that happens. So, right. But it's also kind of how the person sees the trauma and how like helpless they feel because of the trauma. Like it's not the event per se, but it's what the feeling of like powerlessness after. And I thought a lot about that with my groups, is when you're in a system and you're told like, okay, you have to have like 50 families on your caseload and you have to do this and that and the other thing. And then there's no money and there's no temporary workers when you're sick, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, that is a trauma in itself to not be able to do the job like you want to do it. So that's why I've been really interested in like, how can we work with trauma-informed workplaces, right? How can we educate by knowing what causes what? Do we have different policies in place, or different solutions based on what the problem is? That's what I've been thinking a lot about.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot about these things too. And yeah, and another way of thinking about like what is trauma is it's like when something stressful happens and they exceed your ability to cope with that thing, right? You don't have the resources, either internal or external, to
Mm-hmm.
address this thing that's happened to you. So this is why we stay away from like the really specific definitions of trauma, like, oh,
Right.
like you have like you were in an accident and
Mm.
um like some people may really have the resources to have an accident and come
Mm.
out the other side. Uh, Post-traumatic growth is what we call something where somebody even
Mm.
comes out of the other side feeling like, oh, my life has changed in good ways
Yeah.
because I went through that stress and was able to harness my resources, and it taught me
Mm.
something about my life. And some research even suggests that for major critical incidences, more people feel like they have post-traumatic growth than
Mm.
post-traumatic stress, the other side of
Right.
that.
Yeah.
But uh, these are major incidences, and I think there's something different about the long grinding inability to match your resources with
Mm.
your needs, right? That
Right.
maybe in some ways is even more wearing.
Hmm. Yeah, and that also makes me think like about the system, by knowing that this parenting, like this parent or family needs a certain intervention that has a waiting list for a year. Um, that doesn't really help with the situation that either. Like you feel like helpless. I can't do anything else. And that frustration, what does it do to you over time, right?
Yeah,
So.
yeah.
I had another thought. How much, and we never talked about this before, but I'm wondering how much does like secondary trauma come into like, hearing all of these things that people have been, or like children that have been abused, or like how much is that also kind of in trauma-informed care?
Yeah, yeah, we have a lot of different ways of characterizing trauma in when we talk about child welfare systems, right?
Mm.
Like the organizational system effects of trauma, secondary trauma, the the individual factors that we bring with us from our own childhoods
Mm.
that might impact how we can hear and understand trauma into the
Mm.
future. I think of those a little bit, all these different ideas about how we frame what's happening as, you know, uh, they're often used as different variables or ways of measuring or using a scale to say maybe it's this, maybe it's that
Mm.
in research studies. And I think it can be helpful to understand in that kind of way when we're thinking about like uh, what the origin of the cause is, help shape how we think
Mm.
about the intervention, right?
Right. Yeah.
So if I think, oh, I'm really seeing secondary trauma show up in our agencies. I'm talking to all these workers who say, I listen to these really hard stories all day and I don't have any tools for processing and dealing
Mm.
with that. That points to a specific kind of intervention. Like maybe we need to get
Right.
some resources in for workers so that they really have some people to talk to immediately after a critical
Mm.
incident.
Mm.
And if we're saying like, it's we're hearing workers say all the time, I feel like I'm constantly having to put people off because we don't have the resources to meet their needs, and that makes me
Mm.
feel really bad about showing up every day. That
Mm.
potentially points to another kinds of focus of the intervention. So I think the
Right.
reason that those kinds of definitions are helpful is because they
Mm.
point to where we might really focus our energy.
Yeah.
And yet I think like ultimately understanding this like fairly organizationally and from a that universal precaution
Mm.
kind of way, like let's assume that all of our workers
Yeah.
are dealing with some sources of trauma in their lives that affect their work, no matter
Mhm.
exactly where that comes from. How would we like redesign how we work together a little bit to
Yeah.
make their lives better so that they can make the lives of the people that they work with better.
Yeah. And it's so interesting too, because like, of course, the way we get are treated is the way we treat other people. But I'm thinking like, I wonder how many workplaces actually know the difference between like burnout or like secondary trauma, for example, and what sorts of, I don't know, I'm seeing before me like some sort of, I don't know, formula or form or something where you can actually like, okay, check for this, check for that. Like, how can we support bosses or supervisors to, in their conversations, so they know what's what? Because then if you know what the actual problem is, then you'll know which intervention is best. Is that the sort of thing that you guys train in when you're working with supervisors?
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of the things that we talk about. And so I have a PhD in social work, and I did my PhD research in organizational culture in child welfare systems. So this has been sort of a long time passion of mine. And so
Mm,
one of the things that we did is I went in and did some um, I created a big survey to say, like, what's going on in the organization that's causing you stress and burnout, right? Which one of these things impact
mm,
your effects the most? And
yeah.
what some people wrote in the little comments in my qualitative data collection was, like, one of these things is people like you coming to ask me over and over what's wrong and never doing anything about it. And so I
Mm,
think child welfare systems are some of the most over-assessed systems, and then we're not so good at those follow-through
yeah,
interventions sometimes.
right.
And so, like, I assessment can be good if there are strong plans for like what we're gonna do about it, right?
Hmm,
Like,
hmm.
let's really think from another lens that we bring to our work is what we call an implementation science approach.
Right.
How do we say we're not only gonna train people on motivational interviewing, but we're gonna plan for how to keep these skills alive and active in the organization. We're going to think about like how do we make sure that our policies and practices in this
Mm,
environment are supporting this thing that we're asking you to do every day?
hmm.
How do we keep you engaged in the, training and feedback
Hmm.
cycle related to those skills so that you can keep using them? How
Yeah,
do we make sure your supervisors and managers stay trained in them so that they're supporting and reinforcing them
right.
and they're
Yeah.
trying to use those same skills themselves? And so assessment is good, except I think sometimes assessment can be harmful if it's not connected to
Yeah.
follow up
Yeah.
intervention. Same thing with our
Definitely.
clients, right? Like we can actually do harm if we go do a lot of trauma screening with our clients
Mm,
and then don't do anything about it when they say, yes, I've had
yeah.
trauma experiences.
Yeah. And that's really important too, because if you're not willing to like do the work after the assessment period, then there's no point in doing an assessment really. And I think that's also something that will contribute to like a trauma response. Again, like you called it moral injury. It's like, okay,
Yeah,
well, I already said that all these things, and I have to continue doing
yeah,
it because you're not making
yeah,
any changes in the system. So
yeah.
yeah, it's interesting. This, I don't know, this has been like some sort of, do you know if like that you can you educate trauma-informed care in other systems than child welfare, or is it, yeah?
Oh,
Okay.
sure. Yeah. Child welfare system innovation happens to be uh, one of my first passions.
Mm-hmm.
And working in public social systems more generally, also, I just think that there's so much room for high impact.
Yeah.
Um, but certainly these principles can fit
Mm-hmm.
anywhere. I can hardly think of places that need
You
them much
couldn't.
more than child welfare agencies.
It's kind of
And
like what
so
I say.
I bet people are really interested in thinking about like, well, you say all these things. What does this really look like? What does it really
Yeah.
mean when we say like trauma informed? What are the signs?
Yes.
And so one of the things that happens sometimes when people start hearing about principles of trauma informed care in organizations, they go like, that seems like a really good idea. You know, it's trauma informed if we have softer lighting in the waiting room. And we take down those like signs that say stop, are your pockets empty? And like that we're looking for your weapons, and we think about some of those environmental things first, and certainly those things play a role in and it's great that people are thinking about like what's a trauma informed waiting room look like in a public
Right.
service agency. What are the signs and signals that complement feelings of safety or trustworthiness in an agency? So those are one of the most like clear, obvious, I can look and see, like, does this feel like something, a place where I feel safe and comfortable, right? Those are some of the external signals. Then, so when we do our training, we ask for longer term commitments from agencies if they really want to make this stick. But you cannot send your workers to a 3-hour training or even a 3-day training and say they're going to be competent in MI now, and this is all you need to do. And now they're out there doing trauma-informed motivational interviewing practice, right? Like this is deep work and it takes some investment. If we're talking about retraining systems, especially in how they work with people. So some of the things that we focus on are things like first, some assessment, like you mentioned, about like what do we think's really going on here? What are the particular stuck points at our agency? Where do we think that like oh, we're on a good track, but then it gets really off, like when we learn a new training, or why aren't people using these skills already? Like what's stopping us?
Right,
And,
like not having enough time or whatever to do things.
And so before we even think about like how do we train somebody in the practical skills of motivational interviewing, how are we going to make time and space to use those skills? What skills do we maybe have to stop using, or what things do we need to stop doing so that we're not overlapping and sending people in multiple directions at once, right? And how are supervisors going to integrate these skills in a supportive way? So in the training that we do, I find that this is one of the very hardest things, is we tell workers as part of MI, go out and ask your clients good questions about what they want for themselves, listen to their answers, reflect, give them choices. And then when it comes to training, we say, okay, supervisors, so you're also learning these skills. We want you to do the same things for your workers. We want you to ask them good questions, let them process, think about what they care about, and prompt them for ways of getting to the things that matter the most to them. And supervisors really struggle with that. They say, we don't have time for that. We have I know what they need to do. I'll tell them what they need to do, and then they just need to go do it. I've been around in the system for lots of years and know how this is supposed to look. And it so mirrors what workers say about what it's like to work with their clients, right? They say, well, you know, I've seen families like this and I know what they need. And I would love to sit there and listen to them all day long. I don't have the time. My caseloads are too high. And I just need to go tell them this is what you need to do. And actually, they'll appreciate it if I'm just direct with them, tell them what to do, how to do it. They want me out of there. I want to get out of there.
It's the common goal.
Like we can really justify that in our heads about like this is what it looks like. And so one of the things that we really think about early on is just like we sometimes refer to this as like parallel process, like what's happening in supervision mirrors so much about what happens in people's homes and families. Often, you know, we talk to parents about the same kinds of things, that like they like, well, you know, not everything about raising a healthy kid is just telling them you have to do it this way. And it's my way or the highway. Sometimes we really have to listen and think about where they're at and what would be most helpful to them in the moment.
And also how they got there. Like,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
thinking back to in the beginning when you talked about that there's like generational trauma, there's generational
yeah,
systems and families that have made maybe this family the way they are, and that's you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like, you can't, yeah, it's really important to kind of look at the big picture.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
what
This
I,
is the way I did it when I was a child welfare worker, and you have to do it this way, and this
yeah,
is the way it's always been. And
yeah,
yeah, those like almost perpetuated cycles of
yeah.
abusive environments.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's really important, I think. And I think what basically like if you were going to give one tip to a supervisor or a boss, let's put it that way. If you were going to give one tip to what would you suggest that the boss or the supervisor should do to start looking at implementing a trauma informed care environment for their workers?
Um, Gosh, uh, it's a great question, and I want to be thoughtful. What
Mhm.
my mind goes right to is the same thing that we tell workers very often is um, give less advice and
Mm,
ask fewer questions.
mm,
And so what's left? Like a lot of listening and a lot
mm.
of reflections,
Yeah.
right? That perhaps help people think about what they're already thinking.
Mm,
But you know, in my of course we do like really focused kind of reflections. Like what kind of
yeah.
reflections can I offer that help
Mm.
get people thinking in a direction that is going um to move them to the places that they want to get in life, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I think when supervisors can do that and model the
Mm.
slowing down in supervision and model the like, gosh, you've really been thinking about this and you really want
Yeah.
to do good work. Tell me more about what that looks like for you and this
Yeah.
family, right?
Right.
Like giving workers space to think about those
Mm.
things improves their clinical skill building, improves their thoughtfulness about their work, improves a sense
Mm.
of autonomy and like you trust me to come up with some ideas
Yeah.
and you value the way that I'm thinking about this. Like
Hmm.
if we
Hmm.
can pass on those things to our workers to strengthen their own internal feeling about what it's like for them to do the work, and they
Hmm.
can go do that for families, then it gives them space to start heal the organization, right? Like
Yeah,
when we're doing that
exactly.
for each other within a shared space,
Mm.
things have to start feeling better.
Yeah. Yeah, and what you're describing really is like collaborating and not being an expert, right? Like we have to get away from boss and supervisor is the expert. They know the best of how this worker should deal with this family, and instead, like um, evoking from the people. Oh, yeah, it's powerful, it's very powerful. And I think if we all kind of thought more about this and thought like took maybe perhaps even more responsibility or accountability, I think we would have a lot of different, like we have a lot of people that are on sick leave here, for example. I think, and
Yeah.
burnout rates are high. Like I think we would have a much better positive environment to work in. So
Yeah, yeah, and it's hard work too,
yeah.
right? Like doing motivational interviewing, like letting go of some of that expertise. It's hard for me. I slip into it as a trainer and I try to
Oh yeah.
model it in training sometimes, like
Mm,
okay, like and the harder sometimes that it is to do the work, like the people
mm.
who need more of that like listening and softness, we almost have this internal drive to get a little more bossy
Yeah,
about
exactly.
how we tell them what they need to do. And so like one of the places that comes up for me is I tell people like, okay, it's going to be such a weight off your shoulders when you don't have to be the expert and boss all the time. Like
Mm,
you can let go of that and it's
yeah,
kind of freeing and you don't carry the whole weight of what happens in this case because it's not all about you. Like some of it
that's
is
right.
about you, but it's not all about you.
Yeah.
And so you just need to trust me and do what
Mhm.
I say,
Yeah,
which is
exactly.
which is exactly what I'm preaching against, right? Like, just trust me that it's going to be better if you just do it just like I'm telling you to do it right
Exactly. If
now.
you just do MI, it'll be fine.
So, yes. So,
I
so
know. I'm always
being a
there.
trainer is a lot of practice of MI too, and trying to let go of my own need for to make sure that I'm teaching in such a way that people are forced to get it right because I can't do that either. And sometimes I have to let go and go like, okay, like we're gonna share some messages, and some people like it's not gonna fit for them right now, but we might be planting seeds for a future date that it does fit. And there are people who work with this person who it doesn't fit for any right now, who are going to demonstrate it and share it and use it in such a way that they might have an impact on and how other people see the work. And
Exactly.
so, we've got to think about these things, I think, as tiny ripples. And I do think this is one of the other things that contributes to burnout and child welfare, is just that it's tempting to measure things in such big, wide swaths. Like, it was a terrible day, it was a good day.
Yeah.
That like we really have to think about those, like where did I have my best impact today, and what might that grow into. So
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, I think about you and the supervision and support that you give to people working in child welfare, and how important it is for them to have support like that. One, right? So you're starting all those ripples.
Yeah.
Two, also just like giving people a place to reflect on where they can make an impact without feeling like everything is on them to fix our systems.
Yeah. That sounds like actually a wonderful place to start to close, because I feel like it's given us enough information of what it is and how MI can be used in trauma-informed care, and also I feel hopeful, and that's wonderful. I want to go with that feeling.
Yes.
But I feel like it's hopeful, because as the system, even though it's like hard to change and everything, I think that, like you said, ripples, every little ripple can and lead to a bigger change later on. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for taking the opportunity and time. I know it's your morning now, and thank you for talking to us and teaching us about this. I feel very grateful that I listened to you in Christchurch as well.
It's so nice to these moments where we get this like shared experience of going like, you know, like uh, all over the world, we have some shared experiences that
Yeah,
shape what it's like to do the things that we do.
yeah,
And it's like it's really, really different. We all have really unique experiences in some ways, but also there's this shared understanding of like
yeah.
both the power of motivational interviewing to have a good effect on our work,
Hmm.
and both the like struggles that we're going through as we try to make systems better and choose
Yeah.
to dedicate our professions to providing care and support. And it's part of what makes the MI community so wonderful, I think, is some of
Mm.
those shared values and understandings. Like, we agree that like
Yeah.
working in trustworthy, empathetic,
Mm.
caring ways towards our goals is better for folks in the long
Mm.
run. So
Yeah.
thanks
And for
for
us.
it heals us
Yeah.
as we're healing others. And thanks for inviting me to talk about something I clearly feel really passionate about.
Yes, and it's noticeable. And if there was anybody who watches this that feels like, oh, I have more questions, is it okay if they contact you by email, perhaps, or something?
Yeah, absolutely. The couple ways to find me is we have a website, it's
Hmm. Yeah.
traumainformedmi.com. It's in
Yes.
trauma-informed motivational interviewing. And MelanieSage at gmail.com. Very
Perfect.
basic,
Yeah.
easy way to find me.
Definitely. I will put those links underneath as well, so that like when this goes up on YouTube. So great. Thank you so much, Melanie. And since it's Christmas, we're playing, recording this now. I wish you a very Merry Christmas.
To a wonderful 2026.
Yes, here we go. Thank you.